Welcome to AUDL Weekly. This is the program all about ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more. I'm Evan Lepler, and we are just 2 days away from Championship Weekend 11, which unquestionably, without a doubt, absolutely feels like it's going to be the best Final Four weekend we've had in the history of the league. 4 remarkable and worthy division champs, including the last 2 AUDL champions, and everyone really had to play well this past weekend against fierce challengers to earn their right to make it to Madison. We are well positioned for an all-time ultimate experience starting less than 48 hours from now. So to get ready for all that, you better believe we got a really good show for you tonight. An extensive championship weekend preview conversation during toss-up with Adam and Daniel. And then later on, Matt Smith has Chicago's Sam Kaminsky as his guest for a postseason edition of Up, Line, and Out of Bounds. But first, the divisional playoff drama from this past weekend as we recap and digest all that transpired across the 4 divisional title games. It is a beautiful day for a toss, and that's coming up next as you watch AUDL Weekly on AUDL.tv. So stick around. All right, welcome back. Only 4 games this past weekend, but so many exciting and meaningful moments. It's frankly impossible to cover everything, but let's start in New York, where the league's only remaining undefeated team narrowly escaped with a win against the formidable DC Breeze. Empire looked like the considerable favorite throughout the first 2.5 quarters of this one. Building a 5-goal lead, they led 13-8. But then DC roared back, an 8-3 run to tie the game with less than 3 minutes left. And so many marathon points and thrilling sequences throughout the fourth quarter. And in the end, it all came down to Jack Williams' buzzer-beating toss. The second in as many seasons for the Empire in the playoffs. This time, Williams floating the backhand into the crowd, and it was Ben Yacht rising above everyone with both his read and his reach to make the game-winning grab for New York. Empire win it 19-18 over the Breeze, who gave everything they had and more, but still DC could not topple the reigning East Division champs. New York now 13-0 in the season as they head to championship weekend for the 4th consecutive season. In the South Division final, Carolina wanted to make Austin work for their scores. That meant pushing the cutters underneath and allowing the feisty Flyers handler defenders to make plays in the reset space. And the plan came to fruition as the Soul only attempted 1 huck in the first quarter and then just 7 hucks for the game. Carolina's defense produced 3 breaks in their first 14 minutes, building a 7-3 lead, and the Flyers ultimately prevailed by a final score of 22-20, but Austin never was within 1 at any point in the final 3 quarters. Big games for Anders Jungst, who saw the field for the first time since he got hurt back in May, and Eric Taylor, who orchestrated so many of the Carolina counterattacks, piloting the defense to another division title, although it is technically the Flyers' first South Division postseason title in 7 years since they won the South in their first inaugural campaign in 2015. Flyers winning the championship last year, of course, but they went 8-4 in the regular season, part of the Super Atlantic. So, home playoff win for Carolina, first home playoff win since 2015. Flyers move on to their 2nd straight Final Four. The nightcap on Saturday was a thriller in the Mile High City in front of one of the best crowds in the history of the AUDL. Colorado Summit gave thousands of fans a lot to cheer about early in the game, but the Salt Lake Shred quickly recovered. After falling behind 5-1, they tied the game at 10, and from there it was back and forth. Both teams taking chances, making plays, and just a massively entertaining second half of Ultimate. Salt Lake had multiple opportunities at the end of the third and start of the fourth quarters to take the lead, but they just couldn't do it. Some insane defense from the Summit and some misfortune for the Shred ultimately enabled Colorado to produce 5 breaks over the final 12 minutes of the game, and Colorado wins by 5, 26-21, though even with the 5-goal margin, it still kind of felt like they escaped similarly to the way New York did. I mean, winning by 1 against DC, winning by 5 against Salt Lake. There was a similar feel for big stretches of these two games in terms of the outcome being in doubt. Just a super competitive game overall, though. Joel Clutton, Jordan Kerr, Sean Connell, many others were huge for the Shred, but Matt Jackson had his best game of the season for Colorado, and along with Jay Frood's return from injury and Cody Spicer's defense, I mean, the Summit's depth just got the job done late to bring a division title to Denver in the franchise's first season in the league. Final game of the weekend took place in Chicago. Story of the first half against Minnesota was Chicago's O-line slicing through the windshield D, and Chicago's D-line creating a slew of turnovers, only to fail to capitalize on their break chances time and time again. Consequently, when Minnesota finally got their first break of the game midway through the third, it was just a 1-goal game. Chicago leading 12-11 midway through the third, about 17.5 minutes of game time left. Truly, it was anybody's game if the wind chill could have righted the ship, but they just couldn't do it, and Chicago's D-line finally showed some patience and efficiency after halftime. The Union win it 21-16, their second straight divisional title victory over Minnesota, and Chicago headed back to championship weekend. So, the schedule for this Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. local time in Madison, Colorado and Chicago meeting in the first semifinal, and then at approximately 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Central, a rematch of last year's AUDL title game as New York meets Carolina. Both semifinals will air exclusively on AUDL.tv with extended pregame and postgame coverage, and then Saturday's AUDL championship game will be live on Fox Sports 2 at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, under the lights in Madison. It's truly going to be an epic weekend of Ultimate, and I hope to see you there. Coming up next, Adam and Daniel share their thoughts on the key matchups and who they like to hoist the 2022 AUDL Championship Trophy. Toss-Up is next as we continue on AUDL Weekly. We are back with Adam Ruffner and Daniel Cohen for today's edition of Toss Up. Gentlemen, good to see you. Adam, I was scared for a moment. I thought you'd cut all your hair, but you assured me that your hair is there. Good, good. Daniel, the hair's looking well-conditioned.
It's still here.
Before we get into Toss Up, because all of our Toss Up questions are kind of looking ahead, I want to give you guys each like 30 seconds to answer this question, and I have not prepped them for this, so this is off the blue. What was your favorite moment from this past weekend? Adam, you go first.
I think just the general Colorado Summit home crowd, the way in which it kind of like embodied the lead up to championship weekend, I think so well. Just, it was a big, high scoring, high stakes, big play game between Salt Lake and the Summit. And just the way in which both teams are kind of ping-ponging back and forth off of that energy that the home crowd was providing both teams, I feel like. I thought that the Shred responded so well after falling behind early, and it was just, it had that kind of extra something to it when the game was coming down to the wire in those third and fourth quarters, and 2,000 fans are cheering defense when the Summit are trying to protect their house. There's just, I don't know, there's something special to it. All due respect to New York and another buzzer beater to send them to championship weekend. I just think that it's been so cool to see how big of a response there's been from the expansion team home crowds this year. I think it's been a really good sign out west, and I really look forward to 2023 out there.
Well said. Good stuff. Daniel, what was your favorite thing about the weekend?
It's hard to pick one thing, of course, but I will go with the New York DC game as a whole, and particularly the way it ended. But it was like how they got to that point too, where I was following along the score early in the game, and it just seemed like New York, once they were up by like 3 or 4 in the second quarter, it was like, okay, it was just going to be another one of those New York wire-to-wire finishes. But credit to DC for battling back and getting some really key breaks late in the fourth quarter to keep that game close. And then, of course, like it just had to end that way with the Jack Williams to Ben Yacht buzzer beater. So it all around seemed very fitting for that East Division Championship game.
Good stuff. Good context. Really a tremendous weekend. Let's dive into toss-up. And as a reminder, these two guys disagreed on everything last week. So
that's right.
I meant to go back and see who was right more often than not. Yeah, probably.
yeah.
Toss-up number 1. Adam, get us started. Which all AUDL handler would you rather have anchoring your O-line on Friday? Colorado's Jonathan Nethercutt or Chicago's Pavel Giannis?
Now, I want to specify, I'm not making an indictment on Nethercutt's talent here. He's been an all-world thrower for Colorado this year, one of the top passers in the league. However, I'm a little worried about his throwaway problems in the playoffs. In 8 career starts in the postseason, he's got 25 throwaways. He's completing passes at just over 92% in his postseason career. And while he's got 46 assists to balance that out in 8 career starts, I think in this particular matchup against the Union, turnovers are going to be at a premium. And you compare that to Pavel Giannis and his 4 career starts in the postseason, he's just got 7 throwaways in those 4 games. He's completing almost 96% of his throws, and he's averaging just about the same assist numbers. He's got 22 assists in 4 career postseason games. I like that reliability in this matchup. I think the Summit are going to have a large task trying to trim those turnover numbers down from having played in the West Division all season. And watching the Union lately, that offense isn't turning it over much. They're the second most efficient unit in the league this season, and I expect that to carry into their second straight championship weekend performance. We've been talking about it all year. Experience matters in 2022, and I think that's going to come into play this weekend when Chicago plays Colorado. So I'm going to choose Pavel Giannis.
Adam.
In case that wasn't quite clear.
Adam's got Pavel. Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I would point to the same throwaway concerns I have about Nethercutt. And really, aside from the playoffs, I think he has 12 throwaways in his last 3 games. And while the Colorado offense has still been super efficient, that's the weird part. Like, yes, they are heavily reliant on this big play, huck-heavy style. They are connecting on a lot of them, but it is just a generally more high variance approach. And like Adam was saying, when it comes to playoff games, especially at championship weekend, those turnovers are going to matter like way more than they have previously this season. And I just trust Pavel a bit more in like almost like a game manager role, where it's not like he has to do all of the heavy lifting, like force the disc downfield. He's shown that he does a much better job of just managing the disc and managing each possession. And I think part of that is the pieces around him and the Chicago offense as a whole. But it's going to be an interesting clash of play styles, but I'm going to agree. I'm going to take Pavel over Nethercutt on Friday.
Interesting. Well, both offenses had the same number of turnovers in the playoffs this past weekend, and Colorado had fewer turnovers by a decent margin than Chicago as a team. Because the Chicago D-line had so many. But
I was going to say, it was that Chicago D-line taking some shots.
Yeah. You didn't ask me, but I might go with Nethercutt, but it's obviously close. We'll see.
Choice.
Topic number 2. Daniel, get us started. Which D-line presence would you rather have creating and converting break chances in Game 2 on Friday? Carolina's Eric Taylor or New York's John Randolph?
It's got to be Eric Taylor right now. I mean, part of it is we just haven't seen enough of John Randolph yet, or at least I haven't personally. But Eric Taylor, we saw him take charge on the D-line last year in the playoffs. We saw it again this past weekend against Austin. You forget how dominant he is as not only a matchup defender, like he is very capable of just shutting down his matchups, but then leading that counterattack drive on a Carolina D-line that just thrives on those throw and go, like quick handler motion possessions. I just think he's like the perfect fit for what the Carolina D-line brings. And then of course he brings those classic spin pull abilities to pin opponents deep. So I think overall he brings a little bit more than John Randolph. Not to say that John Randolph is incapable of leading the Empire counterattack the same way that Eric Taylor is. But again, I think we've just seen it more from Eric Taylor at this point. So I'm going to take ET.
Adam?
I'm going to make it 2 for 2 and agreeing with Daniel and take ET as well. Look, I mean, he's leading the team in assists this year despite starting in fewer than 10 games. He's one of the best pullers in the league, as Daniel mentions, and I'll take it a step further. I think right now in this league, there isn't a more balanced player top to bottom and a full skill set than Eric Taylor. I mean, you talk about his pulls, you talk about his throwing, you talk about his matchup defense, you talk about his off-disc movement, you talk about his leadership. I mean, you can just go on and on and on about this guy. It's hard to talk about him dominating all the time because he does it so much within the Carolina system, but I think ET is one of the most impressive players around right now. And again, like Daniel says, all due respect to John Randolph, he's been a blitzing fullback for them on counterattack drives. I love when he just gets going in those red zone conversion stations, but they're not asking a whole ton of him right now. I still think he's got his best game left, and I'm really excited to see him match up against some top level competition on the Flyers offense in that semifinal on Friday.
I love the vision of a blitzing fullback, and I'm trying to figure out how that works, but I like it. It's an apt description. I do think you could say a lot of the same things that you said about Eric Taylor about John Randolph, and I agree we haven't necessarily seen it that much, but maybe a year or two from now, we talk about Randolph the same exact way we talk about Taylor now. So anyway, I do think, as you said, Randolph hasn't played his best game yet for the Empire, and he very well could be an X factor this weekend. All right. It has come to the time where you need to make your picks. Topic number 3, toss up, straight up pick 'em. Who you got in the first semifinal, Adam? The Summit or the Union?
I think I might have tipped my hat a couple answers ago, but I'm going to go with the Union and the 2-time reigning Central Division champions. I really like the way that their offense is working right now. I like all of their players and playmaking positions. Giannis, the all-time assist leader now in the league, is playing some of his best offense. He's balanced around him by more players and stars than ever. I really like how the Union are kind of rounding into their fullest form at this time in the season. I think that bodes really well. And while I'm really excited to see them matched up with Colorado's still got to kind of prove it. And they had some trouble last week winning at home against Salt Lake, and I'm a little worried about how that energy carries over when they're not going to have the advantages of playing at elevation and the way in which it energizes their deep attack. I think they might have a little bit of first half adjustment playing in Bree Stevens against a Union team who knows that environment basically as well as anybody outside of the Madison Radicals.
Fair enough. Daniel, what do you think?
I think I'm gonna agree right now. I do feel like my picks are sort of constantly changing day to day in really both these matchups. The concern I have for Chicago is the D-line offense, and we saw them just convert whatever it was, like 39% of their possessions against Minnesota. They have a tendency to just shoot and not really value the disc on those turnovers, but I do think at this point in the season, you get to the playoffs, it is generally an offense-dominated game, and the better offense should win. And like Adam said, and like we were talking about with Pavel versus Nethercutt, I think I just trust the Chicago offense a little bit more to play that more tame playoff-style ultimate that we've seen from them really over the past few weeks. Like, we know Chicago is capable of that same Huck-style, efficient, continuation throwing attack that Colorado has done so well this season. But I think the fact that we've seen them almost transition to a more possession-based approach when they need to limit those turnovers, I think my trust is favoring Chicago at this point.
Real quick, one word answer, yes or no. And I have not seen a line for these games yet as we record this, but if Chicago's favored by 1.5, do you still give the points and take the Union?
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not.
We got a disagreement.
Won't do it.
Here we go. All right.
Wait, 5.
Let's move on to the second game of the night, the rematch of last year's 2021 AUDL Championship game. Who you got, Daniel, in Friday's second semifinal? The undefeated Empire or the 12-1 Flyers?
Well, I do think the Empire are going to win the AUDL Championship this year, but I'm not at all confident in it anymore. Like, the fact that they played DC to a 1-goal game, again going to championship weekend off of a buzzer beater, which is, somewhat fluky, somewhat luck. I mean, you can argue that Jack Williams just has the magic touch on those throws, and Ben Yad was bound to come down with it. But I still think anytime a team just narrowly wins a playoff game, it's hard to repeat that performance week to week. But with New York's team, the star power that they have, I just can't pick against them. I still think they have an extremely strong system, both offensively and defensively. I know offensively they probably get a little bit more aggressive than Carolina overall, but I think just like Chicago, they're capable of playing that more, tame possession-based approach. And I think I'm just going to lean towards the all AUDL talent overall. And there's not a ton more reasoning behind that. It's a gut feeling that this is New York's year.
Adam.
I mean, New York is number one in every single team statistical category this year. It feels like it's kind of absurd to really start plowing through the numbers on what this Empire team has accomplished in 2022. But I'm going to take the reigning champions in this matchup. I think coming off of that DC game, you saw a little bit of a blueprint in how to beat New York, and especially how to contain this offense and at least force them into some B and C options and not just allow them to do what they want to do and make big plays. Obviously, that didn't apply to the very last play of the game, but I thought overall DC did a terrific job at putting a canopy over the top of the Empire offense. And I think that Carolina has the kind of personnel and coaching and strategic adjustments to implement something very similar. And we saw that in last year's championship game. They simply out-executed and outperformed the Empire, even as the Empire were largely favored going into that game. So I kind of expect another uber efficient performance from the Flyers, and I think that they're going to squeak away with a win and get back into the championship and have a chance to defend their title. So go Carolina. We talk about it being a year. It's been Carolina's year now for, I think, over a calendar
many
12
years.
months. So no, but Carolina
they're
Ultimate
on like
in the
year
past
2 or
years
3 at this point.
has been sweeping everything, and I think I don't know if their luck's quite run out yet. So I like the Flyers on Friday.
And it sounds like you like them on Saturday, too, against Chicago.
Maybe. I don't know. I like where Chicago is, too.
Another
We'll see how they
overtime
come off
game?
of that Colorado game. Yeah, right? I mean, I think it could come down to that. I think all 3 games this weekend have a chance to go down to the very wire. I think, we talk about almost kayfabing, hyping this up, about winning its championship weekend ever. It's actually that. Like, all of these matchups are just ridiculous. As you were saying earlier, Daniel, you just go back and forth. I mean, ask me in another hour and I'll sound like the biggest New York Empire fan that existed.
I know.
So
we'll both probably change a couple times.
Well, Daniel has set the standard of how to hedge throughout the year, so we appreciate you setting that example for us.
We're always hedging.
And one of my biggest takeaways from this past weekend, and then we'll wrap this up, was just before the weekend, the Empire or the field, in terms of who's going to win the championship, it seemed kind of obvious. Oh, the Empire are invincible. But now, after what DC did to them, and with how good Carolina, Chicago, and Colorado have all looked, and you look up and down the roster and the role players that are making big plays under the bright lights, it feels very close. I agree with you, Adam. And honestly, if if the line is Union by 1.5 and Empire by 1.5, I think I take the points just because I think these are going to be one goal games.
Yeah,
and we can leave it there. Adam and Daniel, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you both in Madison. Coming up next, Matt Smith with Chicago's Sam Kaminsky up, line, and out of bounds as we get ready for championship weekend here on AUDL Weekly.
What's up, AUDL world, and welcome to the last episode of the 2022 season. This is the last upline and out of bounds, so I brought a special guest on today. He's going to be at championship weekend. He's had an outstanding second year in the league. Out of Chicago, Mr. Sam Kaminsky. How's it going, Sam?
What's going on, everyone? I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm stoked for the audience to get to know you. So with that, we're just going to jump right in. He's seen the show. He knows how it works. So first question for you, hometown.
Yeah, I'm originally from Hopkins, Minnesota in the Minneapolis suburb area.
Very cool. Hometown hero, it would seem. Age.
Age, I am 25 years old.
Nice. Did you attend college? If so, what degree did you receive?
Yes, I went to the University of Minnesota, back in Minnesota, obviously, and I got a marketing and analytics degree while there.
Very cool. And next question, you currently using that? What's your current occupation? What are you up to these days?
Definitely, yeah. I work at LinkedIn. I have my LinkedIn water bottle right here. And I'm working like this post-sales ops role, kind of like account management for LinkedIn.
All right. Shout out LinkedIn, helping people get jobs. Love to see it.
Yep.
We're going to switch over to the ultimate side of things. What is your current position on the field?
Yes, besides catching pulls, especially those Abe Coffin pulls coming down hard, I am a handler on the field, handling with Pavlianis and Kyle Rutledge in the backfield.
Very cool. Underrated skill, catching pulls. I'm going to throw that out there.
Definitely.
And why don't you fill the audience in on your ultimate origin story?
For sure, yeah. So growing up, I have a brother. He's 9 years older than me. And he started playing Ultimate when he was in high school. He kind of helped found the Ultimate team at Hopkins High School, alongside actually Minnesota head coach Ben Feldman. And I grew up just watching him play. I loved watching it. It was fun. He was great at it. Obviously, the team was fantastic back in the day too. So I grew up wanting to play just like him. I also went to summer camps over the summer, and that was like the sport at that camp, not like basketball or soccer. It was Frisbee. So being good at Frisbee was like the cool thing to do. So obviously loved doing it while there, and then played ever since 7th grade competitively. So it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, that's cool to know. So from 7th grade Ultimate all the way to 2 years in the pros, what's been your favorite AUDL moment so far?
AUDL moment so far. Gosh, I think between the two playoff wins, I mean, last year's playoff win, coming down to the wire and having to come back, claw back is exciting. And then this year, just having a convincing true win too. It's just fun to get those wins in front of the crowd, and doing it with your teammates, and, you know, clinching a spot at championship weekend is second to none.
Yeah, absolutely. Playoff wins, hard to come by, and a treasured moment for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, now that the audience knows you a little better, we're going to jump into today's game segment, which is GOATs. It's a classic.
Ooh.
We probably started the season this way. We're going to end it this way. So GOATs is greatest of all time. I'm going to give you a category. You tell me, you know, who, what, when, where, what you think is the greatest of all time in that category. So, first one here. Tell me you're a bit of a superhero guy. So, greatest of all time, MCU action movie.
MCU action movie. There's a ton of good ones. I love them all. I'm a big MCU guy. I will say Captain America Winter Soldier is the top of my list. I love all the Avengers. I love all the Guardians of the Galaxy. All that stuff's great. But that movie, just plot, fantastic. Action, fantastic. It hits all the boxes.
That's low-key, that is my favorite too. Not that I watch them all, but man, the knife fighting scenes, everything about that movie.
Exactly.
Excellent. Love to hear you say it. So. All right, moving on, especially now that we're in agreement. But greatest of all time musical.
Greatest of all time musical. Yes, I'm into musicals. Excuse me, I love my musicals. I'm going to probably say Newsies. Newsies on Broadway. If anyone has Disney Plus, you can watch it on Disney Plus as well. There are a lot of great ones as well, like Wicked and Hamilton of course, but Newsies, I've just got into musicals, and that was one of the first ones I watched, and it was on Disney Plus, so I watched it a ton, and just great storyline. Highly recommend it to everyone out there.
All right. That's a new one for me. I love the recommendation. You told everybody where to see it. Newsies, yep. Disney Plus. Check it out.
Definitely.
All right, couple more here. Greatest of all time, Chicago tourist attraction.
Chicago tourist attraction, wow. So I love the architecture tour here in Chicago. If anyone comes to Chicago, I highly recommend going to Navy Pier, getting on one of the architecture tour boats. They take you on a 45-minute round trip, the Chicago River. When I first went on it, I thought it was going to be boring. I wasn't excited. And then I was fascinated with everything the tour guide was saying, all the buildings and whatnot. So I've gone on it 3 times now. So definitely recommend everyone taking their chance on the Chicago architecture tour.
All right, Chicago architecture tour. It's Gotham, right? That's Chicago's Gotham from the movies, and
exactly. It was the Batman movies.
All right. Well, now you know. Check out the architecture tour. Last one here. I know you've told me you're a fantasy football guy. So, greatest of all time, I would say unique fantasy football prize or punishment for winning or losing your league. What's your favorite one? It can be a prize or a punishment.
I love that. Actually, my fantasy football draft and auction is championship weekend. So prior to the championship game, if we're lucky to make it, I will have my headset in, talking to my fantasy partner to make sure we got a good draft going. But for my favorite punishment, I love the guys that just have to stand on a corner, either wearing a goofy outfit and holding a sign, saying, I suck at fantasy football, and they have to stand out there for 2-3 hours. I just think that's golden. And I know my brother's fantasy league, actually, the loser has to take the SAT and then share the score with all their friends. I mean, there's a million punishments out there. All of them are great. I could never do the tattoo league punishment, but all the ones like that, they're just hilarious, and I love them all.
Both those are really good, and I hope for your sake you are not having to fulfill any of those in this upcoming year. But
no way.
Yeah, those are great. All right, well, I appreciate you playing along. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today, but before we get out of here, any last shout outs you want to give?
Yeah, I think the only big shout out would be to the Chicago Union leadership. Great season. Only one loss so far. Going to keep trying to push until the end. And, with their guidance, Coach Woods, Coach G, and then our captains, and of course our owner, CJ. I mean, we couldn't be here without them. So thank you to all of them, and let's go Union.
All right. Yeah, shout out Union. Y'all have had an awesome year. I know I speak for the entire AUDL audience when I am very much looking forward to watching y'all take on Colorado Summit in the semis, and then we will see from there. But before we can do that, we got to get out of here. So for now, back to Evan.
Great stuff with Matt Smith and Sam Kaminsky, who has obviously been overshadowed a little bit in the Chicago backfield, playing alongside the AUDL's all-time assist king, Pavlianis. But Kaminsky has also had a remarkable season for the Union, shifting to the O-line for the first time since his college days, and he's absolutely going to be a very important player this weekend if Chicago's going to find a way to get 2 wins in Madison. Union, by the way, have won 4 of their last 5 games in Madison. So they are more familiar with Reese Stevens Field than any other team that'll be there this weekend. but suffice to say, the Summit, Empire, and Flyers will give Chicago a very different challenge than the Radicals have in these past few years. Again, it's going to be an epic and unforgettable weekend. My thanks to Adam Ruffner, Daniel Cohen, Matt Smith, Sam Kaminsky, and to our editor extraordinaire, Luke Johnson, for putting the program together tonight. My name's Evan Lepler. Thanks so much for checking out our Championship Weekend Preview edition of AUDL Weekly. Hope you enjoy and cherish all the great Ultimate coming up in Madison this weekend, and our season finale of AUDL Weekly will break it all down for you right here next Wednesday.